So just at the moment, Ali will be just trying to get us the live stream so that those who wish to observe are able to do so. And clearly from the appellant's perspective, just making sure that they're all on. So we're ready. Okay, so we can formally agree that we're on live stream, and I'd like to pass directly and immediately to Commissioner Bigham to open with karakia.
Tēnā rā tātou katoa, koe huhu mai nei I tēnei ahi rungi I te karanga pai o te mana kāwanatanga arohe arā te Local Government Commission mo tēnei kaupapa whakahira mō koutou no Ōpōtiki, no reira nau mai hara mai ki wainganui a tātou. Ko tātou karakia ki te whakanui, ki te whakapua ki tēnei hui, whakataka te hau. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tunga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, kia hi ake ana te ātākura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, mauri ora. I te tuatahi me tukumihi atu ki o koutou o te kaunihira mea mua, kokoi hoki, te kai kaunihira kimara, me o koutou kaimahi I reira, tēnā koutou. Tukumihi atu hoki tēnei uri o Taranaki Maunga mai te tauhauā uru ki a koutou, te haukanga o te tai rāwhiti, ara ko toi rāwhiti hoki tērā, ngā iwi ngai tai, te iwi whakatōia, te whānau āpanui, tēnā hoki koutou katoa, ko tai mai te motu, ki konei, ki Taranaki, ki runga I tēnei papa o Pokekura, mō tēnei ngā au, mō tēnei tai whakahirahira, tēnei tai rongonui te matatini no reira, kei te tukumihi atu tēnei, kia koutou I runga I te kaupapa nui kei wanganui a tātou. Kia ora tātou katoa. Kei a koe, Brendan.
Kia ora, Commissioner Bigham, and thank you. Ko waka Conway, tuku waka, ko tuku, ko moanga tararua, tuku moanga, ko Punahau, tuku rutu, ko Brendan Duffy, tuku ingoa, no horowhenua aho. So I'm Brendan Duffy, Chair of the Local Government Commission. Have had a long career in local government, 21 years at the Horowhenua District Council, 12 of those as Mayor, the last 8 years here on the Local Government Commission. So I'd just like to pass now to fellow Commissioner Bull for her introduction.
Kia ora. My name is Gwen Bull. I've also had a long service in local government, was Chair of the Auckland Regional Council, and spent 6 years on the Local Government Commission. I was awarded the campaign Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit for services to local government, and I'm also a Justice of the Peace.
Thank you, Commissioner Bull. Commissioner Bigham.
Tēnā no tātou. Kia ora, everybody. Thank you for joining with us today. I'm Bonita Bigham. I'm a current Taranaki Regional Councillor for the Māori ward here, former 3-term South Taranaki District Councillor, and also a term on the Community Board. So this is my 5th term in local government. Also been involved with Te Maruata as chair there for many years, the National Collective of Māori in Local Government, and have sat on National Council for Local Government New Zealand in various capacities. So grateful to be with you here today from Te Matatini, live from Te Matatini. Kia ora.
We are all across the planet today. So that's the introduction from commissioners. And now I'd just like to pass to our administrative team who back us in the background. Courtney?
Kia ora koutou, ko Courtney Hayward aho, ko kaitohutohu matua ku Turanga Mahi. I'm Courtney and I am the lead advisor for this representation review for the Commission.
Thank you.
And kia ora koutou, ko Donald Rizibos toka ingoa. I'm a principal advisor for the Commission and have I don't know, several years of experience dealing with representation reviews and other matters for the Commission.
I think that's slightly unfair. I think it's several dozen years. Ali?
Kia ora. I'm Ali Manning. I'm with the LGC and I'm running the tech today.
Okay, so that's the formal introductions from our side, from the Commission. Just a couple of observations before we pass directly to you, Mayor David, for your introductions and then into the proceedings of the day. Clearly, we're online. There's usually the occasional challenge with using the technology. We've managed to hurdle the first one. Just to observe that if you'd notice that Commissioners' heads are down, it's because we're taking notes rather than falling asleep. It's just one of those challenges when you're online, making sure that we're keeping up with the proceedings. So I just want to make that observation. And as we go through the proceedings, there'll be occasions where there'll be questions that we will want to ask that may not be able to be asked immediately of council. So we have what's called the right of reply. And if those occasions come across where we pose a question, either after your submission or when we hear from appellants, we'll keep a note of those questions and forward them through to you to make sure that nothing gets missed, just to make sure that that everything's well and truly recorded. So don't panic if you can't keep a full record. Maybe there won't be any, we'll just see how we go. But they're probably the two key points just to observe. And also just acknowledging Ben and Dale, who are on screen, who are your advisors. Welcome to today. So if I can pass over now to you, Mayor David, for your intro, and then for your team just to go straight into the summaries of your submission.
Ko se, tēnā koutou katoa, ko maki o te maunga, ko aua te awa, ko whakatohia me ngā tūhoi, me Ngāti Parau, hoku iwi, ko Ngāti Patimoana te haku, ko David Moahau. Councillor Kimura here today. Cindy obviously helping us. I don't know if you want to have them introduce themselves. We've got time. Hand them over.
Tēnā tātou, ko pukuni te maunga, ko waiera te awa, ko te whānau noki te hapu, ko te whānau hapuni te iwi, ko Maxi Kimura, tōku ingoa. John.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Stacey Lua taku ingoa. I'm the Chief Executive of Ōpōtiki District Council.
Kia ora koutou, my name is Cindy Butt and I'm assisting Ōpōtiki District Council with their representation review.
Thank you. And we have our tech support, Ivan, on hand in case anything goes wrong. Move on to, we'll just move on to the, yeah. We'll just move on to the current arrangements if that's okay. I'm happy to take questions at any stage too, if it's easier for you.
Yeah, that's all up.
Yep, got it.
Thank you.
Okay, I won't go over in detail each slide, but I'll just got some notes if I wouldn't mind to read. On the current arrangements, we looked at changing that with the Māori ward. So the Ōpōtiki district has one of the highest voter turnout, or is a very good turnout. Always could improve, but 2022 we had 53.89% and 2019 54. So it is, we have got a great voter turnout. Could always be better, and we're always striving to do that. Just move on to the next slide. Just on the previous slide, just those current boundaries, I think they've been in place since 2001. Yeah, so they've been established for a long time, and prior to that we had quite a few more councillors when they reduced it to 6. So the community is quite used to those. We'll move on to legislative requirements. We had a lot of help from Dale through this process. This wasn't just a box ticking exercise, but we went through and as the review was conducted, along with our local advice in our council, and we believe we sort of met all the requirements legislatively. It wasn't just about that. It was doing as much as we can to make sure that we comply. We can move on to the next slide, please. Establishing Māori wards. We decided in 2020 to have a non-binding poll, which took effect in October 2022. But actually establishing Māori wards has been a journey that's actually been a lot longer than that. And I believe the journey started under Mayor John Forbes. We were working to this stage, and under his leadership, our council had 50% of the councillors were Māori, I think in 2014. So, it was a big change from the past to actually seeing it normal to having Māori at the table. So, but I think he laid the groundwork for what we put in place. We were the only ones that had a non-binding poll, and yeah, it was a big part of it. And we wanted to make it, we wanted to hear from the community during this process, and they gave us a slight majority of 50.23% were in favour of having Māori wards. So it added weight to the discussion of implementing them. Move on to the next one. The community's interest, the East Coast Rohe from Cape Whangarei to Torere, it could be described as a real remote and isolated community. It's something that we all, it is quite a long distance. It's not, so it's very. I'll move on to the next one if that's all right. Iwi consultation. Prior to making the decision to establish Māori wards, it was important the council engaged early with iwi partners. While we only received one formal piece of feedback, the general consensus among our three iwi supported council establishing Māori wards. The meeting to actually decide whether we established Māori wards, I didn't have our iwi turn up to support us. It was in hindsight, it would have been nice to have them there. But look, we managed to get the decision. It was decided by our council to implement the Māori wards. Having no iwi on the day of that decision, it's no reflection on them. Their workloads are so large. So, it was probably not. It wasn't a reflection on them that they didn't turn up on the day. But anyway, we managed to put them in. And then we moved to the community consultation. So we had advice right through this process with Dale guiding us on what we needed to do. We took it to we didn't have a lot of responses, to be fair, but our councillors, they have a fairly good understanding of our community. We all sort of move in different circles, and we did do a lot of engagement ourselves right across the rohe. So we had general support for doing what we did, even those are from non-Māori. So we'll leave it there. The council deliberations. We had engaged early with iwi. We undertook the community consultation in addition to the mandatory public submission process, and elected members worked through several representation options that included advice from the Commission that a bespoke model council proposed was not able to be progressed. We took the review seriously, taking the time to understand the process of our legislative responsibilities and undertake genuine engagement in our community. we've got a summary there of the options investigated. These were widely discussed. It wasn't just picking something that suited us before we got to the final proposal, but at the heart of it, a lot of our decisions were, we realised how important it was to retain the Coast Community Board. They spoke to their submission on the Treaty Principle Bill this morning. They're not just, they're there to help us and, engage with the community. So that was at the heart of some of our decision making, making sure we can retain them. And we came to the final proposal. But this again, it wasn't a matter of picking something that suited us or resembled the same thing, but having the Coast Community Board as a strategic, it was an integral part of moving forward for us. We believed we wanted to have them there as well as the Māori wards, retaining the boundaries was important for the coast. We did try and we looked seriously at how we could move the boundary that currently exists to try and actually make the comply with the to reach the compliance required. Yeah. But shifting the boundary just simply didn't give us any any major differences. Perhaps Ben and Dale can speak more to that if the technical side of it, but we seriously looked at that, and it also meant isolating some of our community outside of what they class as their traditional area. Yeah. So that's, sorry. Yeah, so talk to that. We decided early we definitely wanted to keep our Coast Community Board, which is, we all value their input, and they played a key part in the discussions about establishing Māori wards in our final proposal. As shown in the final proposal, results in non-compliance. It's given the isolation of the community. It's probably not unusual to have it sitting outside where ideally it should be. But yeah, in conclusion, our investigation, we believe the two Māori wards are appropriate for our district. I'll just move on to the next one, sorry. Reasons for approval. Any measure to achieve the compliance, like I said, would not necessarily result in more effective or fair representation. I just want to raise something that often when I'm talking to especially young people in our rohi about maybe looking at having a future in local government, one thing that actually, the first thing they ask us is, what do you get paid? What's the remuneration? And that is actually part of it. Part of it, the more councillors we got, actually the pool stays the same, so that waters down what's paid. So it's a key thing for some of our people. And if we want diversity, and not just talking about ethnicity, I'm talking about age. It is something to seriously consider. We're one of the, I think we're the 5th lowest median household income in the country. And the current remuneration would actually put us slightly above that. So it could help, but it's not the main reason, we chose what we wanted. The other challenges we had, and as a consequence of COVID, we retained the ability to use Zoom. We needed to have meetings, and without that ability to do that, there's been times when we've been severely challenged to get the numbers for quorum, and that was one of the reasons why we looked at increasing our number from 6 to 7. So it's you know, hopefully we can retain that ability to use offline. But like we see today, you have challenges in that area. So yeah, it's just one of those, and it just really takes the workload off a little bit of the current councillors, because we've had a fair bit on our plate the last training and the previous training, to be honest. Yeah, and two councillors for the proposed Māori board provide fair and effective representation in our view, and we believe the East Coast area, like I say, it's described as remote. So I want to just close off, and I'm happy to have any questions asked of Councillor Kimura. He may want to speak, but I'd like to thank the Commission today for taking the time to hear us out. I'd like to thank my councillors and the staff for the work that they've done to get us to this point. This hasn't been an easy kaupapa for some of us, and when we made the decision, it was a democratic decision to have a non-binding poll, and it was also a democratic decision to implement Māori rules. It wasn't something that was a given, so I really appreciate it. One of the, you know, wasn't a unanimous decision to implement Māori rules. One of the pushbacks was we don't know what we're getting, and that is true. So we don't know what we get, but we've asked for something that we think suits our community, and we know our community. If we've got it wrong, and some of us made a decision to implement Māori rules, knowing that this could be the end of our local government career, but we did it because we believed it was the right reason to do it. So it's been a long process. But yeah, I'd just like to leave it on a little, just a plea. It was a democratic decision for us to put this in. We hope that this has been, you know, hope this is respected and retained, you know, is retained, and our public will decide whether we got it wrong or not come October. So thank you again for today, and hand it over to you for any questions.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Mayor David. I'll just get you to just take that screen off if we can, please, and then we can. We're a bit easier to see everybody. Perfect, fantastic. Look, there are a number of questions that we'd probably like to ask, and if I can just kick off. You mentioned about how you engage with the community, and I'd just like to go back to the observation you made where during the survey period, 11 engagement hui were held throughout the rohi. Can you just give us a bit more detail on what actually occurred? Maybe some sense of numbers, where they were. Just help us. From our perspective, it's really important to understand a bit more of the detail. So can somebody just give us a bit of a sense in that space? And if you can't answer it right now, that's fine. We can hold it over to right of reply. It's your call.
You want me to say?
Page is it?
That is page 8.
Yeah, look, and it really is quite. I mean, I've got a stack here. I mean, I could go through it, everything, but look, we went out to the community in different places. You know, it's hard for it's hard to expect people to come to us, but we definitely went out there, and one of the highlights was going to Ngāi territory to meet down there and present at the Watatini Festival down there. So yeah, look, it's that's the regional one. So it's, yeah, we can probably do in the writer reply if you want an exact number of where we went. But I have, you know, this is where we engaged with iwi early in the process of implementing Māori Woods and the Coast Community Board. We don't have access, I'm a member of Whakatō here, we don't have access to their database. Anything that Whakatō here wants to put out, they reach in my entire whānau and myself. So we shared with them hoping to go out to a wider audience, to those, you know, directly affected. So they have to explain why they didn't do that. But we went ahead and did what we needed to do as a Coney header. Yep. And we ticked those boxes. It wasn't just about a box tick. I really must stress, it wasn't about a box ticking exercise. And I do take on board, you know, you have learnings and and to be fair, some of us had opposition from our own Māori community about actually having Māori Woods. So it was a very it was quite a challenging kaupapa to talk to. Yeah, so.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's fine. In the same space, we talked about iwi hapu boundaries, and I'm just quite keen to explore how much detail council went into to consider that as the practicality or not.
I'm going to answer that now, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I honestly don't believe it's the role of the council to decide iwi boundaries. That's something we decide. The boundary that currently there pretty much is to whānau Apanui and Ngātai. That's the current electoral boundary. That's where the Coast Community Board fits in. Yeah, so it's not something that we can do. So that is the majority of the people. That is the two iwis in there. So one of the key things for us that we realised is, you know, if you had four Māori Woods at large and four general woods at large, we could have easily faced the Coast Board having no representation. It was a very rare, and we did have feedback from Ngātai. Actually, was the only iwi that gave us feedback, and was from the chair at the time, Anna, who I believe is the chair now. And I just, his comment was invariably Whakatohea to whānau Apanui would he have greater portion of enrolments on the Māori compared to, say, Ngātai. And, you know, their views are very important to us, but the general, you know, the bulk of our people on the Māori roll are within probably the township, and could quite easily be falling under, you know, could easily go all Whakatohea's way, which is not a good way to get good representation. I'm sure they can look through, anyone that's appointed has to look at the whole community. It's not about, once you're elected, being elected is one thing, but once you're elected, you are taking on concerns of everyone. Doesn't matter where you're from. So I'm sure they would actually work through that. But iwi boundaries is something that often that was raised by members of the community, wanting Māori Woods specifically for their iwi, and that just doesn't follow, you know, we are ruled by the Westminster system. That's what we're stuck with, but it didn't work under that system. What I would say to that though, I believe we're one of the two councils in the country that had all the mayors who stood for elections last year were of Māori descent. And it's no accident that it's the two councils. It's the reflection of our communities and the makeup of our community. So we can actually make this work for us, but we have to protect particularly the Coast Board. I'm talking about the whānau Apanui and Ngātai. We have to protect the ability to be at the table. Sorry, that's long-winded, but trying to fit this all in one session is very difficult.
No, truly. Look, I really appreciate the observations that you're making. You'll appreciate from our perspective when we have to adjudicate over these sorts of issues. It's really important to get those, I suppose, varying varieties of views. Those observations that you've made there, Mayor David, have helped to clarify much more deeply why you've landed where you've landed. So I appreciate that. It's good.
Can I just add to that just one little thing? This area is, unfortunately, a lot of my generation and the young generation had to move away from work. And all our three iwi suffer from the same problem in that less than 10% of us actually live within our rohe, 90% on the way. So when we engage with at those events, we're engaging with iwi that no longer live in our rohe, but their voice still matters. It's not just about the people on the road. It's listening to the wider community. Hope that makes sense.
Thank you. Can I just check in with fellow commissioners? Where's the gallery? Fellow commissioner, Commissioner Bigham.
Ai, tēnā no koe, David. Koutou hoki o te kāinga rā. I'm just interested to know where you think the breakdown happened, why we now have Toi Rāwhiti as a collective talking about what they see as not having happened around the final proposal that went out, because it sounds like there was a lot of iwi consultation and good dialogue happening in the pre-Māori ward discussions and leading up to getting those implemented. But it sounds like the iwi are feeling there wasn't the same amount of interaction and discussion post that and pre your final representation review proposal. Can you help us understand how that might have gone sideways and why iwi might be feeling how they are now?
I will answer that now, and I'm not going to wait. Toi Rāwhiti was initially set up for the localities, and I was part of that as a mayor. Toi Rāwhiti, I'm not going to speak for Te Whānau Apanu, maybe Maxie can speak for them, and Linda is from Ngāi, so it's a question for them, but Toi Rāwhiti does not represent my iwi. And if you look on, this is a separate thing, so they are part of our iwi, and their kaupapa has changed from the localities. I mean, that's going to be something that comes back and bites us. It was a really good kaupapa going down, and as a country, we're going to suffer for that change in direction, I believe. And that was what it was set up for. I moved away from that as the view changed. It moved into another movement, as far as I'm concerned. That's my view as a member of Whakatohea, as well as the mayor. And I regrettably withdrew my out of that space. So I was originally one of the four on there. Yeah, so they have not, and I'm just going to say, they have not engaged with our community. I can tell you for sure for Whakatohea and those that I've spoken from other iwi, but I'm not going to speak specifically about the whānau Apanu. You can ask that of Councillor Kimura if you want.
Well, before I lead you down that path, and I apologise, I know, iwi kaupapa, iwi kōrero, perhaps rather than try to dissect what went wrong, how might what the iwi are asking for now, is there still a possibility for that to be accommodated?
I don't think it's an ask from the iwi. You're asking about Toi Rāwhiti's appeal, so I need to hear this from my iwi. I'm sorry.
Okay, ka pai. Kia ora, thank you. That clarifies a lot for me. Kia ora.
Cheers, Commissioner Bigham. Just checking in with Commissioner Bull. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You state that increasing the number of councillors elected to the Maori wards would limit effective representation. What do you mean by that? How does that work?
I'm not quite sure where you got that question from. The reason why we're implementing Māori wards is to give better representation.
Commissioner Bull, was that in relation to having the one host community Māori ward representative as opposed and the 3 or 2 on the Ōpōtiki Māori ward? Is that where your question lay?
We're talking about the Ōpōtiki Māori ward.
No, what
Being 2 instead of 3, is that?
I think what I referred to was like if we would have, one of the options that we looked at early on was possibly having 4 at large, 3 at large, or quite general. So just physically the numbers of electors in those districts, those rohe, if they were all at large, there isn't the numbers to probably, we could lose a voice at the table if Ngaitai and Te Whānau Apanui didn't have enough people to elect someone, and they could possibly be elected. There's more people living in Ōpōtiki for whakatohea descent, so I don't think it would be a good reflection having everyone from the one iwi. That's what I was referring to. The more Māori wood, the better.
Thank you for that.
Right, I think we've got a fair perspective from you, Mayor David, and thanks for the way you've summarised what is clearly a heck of a lot of work. I think we should just park that up there, and Ali will, if we can now move through to the appellants, and now I'm not 100% sure how many attendees. I know Jodie's, I can see Jodie there. I can see the screen. And maybe when Jodie comes on, we'll get clarity about whoever else was here in support. Have I got that right?
Correct, Brendan. Jodie will confirm whether or not she's joined by anyone.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Kia ora, Jodie. Can you hear us, Jodie?
Yes, I can. I thought for a second there I was kicked out. Apologies. I was a little bit stressed it disappeared, but I'm back.
Perfect. So have you been observing up to date?
Yes.
Perfect. Fantastic. Well, welcome, Jodie. And it might be just useful to clarify who else, if anybody, is with you.
Kia ora. Unfortunately, we were to have representing Te Rāwhiti beside me,
Right.
Lisa Kelly, who is the Ngaitai representative. And on behalf of Ngaitai, the chairperson, Anaru Verko, also sends his apologies. Okay. Unfortunately, Lisa's a midwife and she's brought up with babies. And Ankurakirangi Gage, representing Te Whānau Apanui, was also expected to be with us. But as you can all appreciate, the matatini scheduling, Te Whānau Apanui take to the stage at 4:58 p.m. today, and they are in the process of preparing for that. So unfortunately, timings haven't allowed, but they send their apologies, as well as Dickie Farrar, who has provided a mandate for me to speak on behalf of Toi Rāwhiti as our iwi collective.
Okay, I really appreciate the explanations there, Jodie, and I suppose you could be comforted that Commissioner Bigham is on site observing all the activities. So there's a little bit of a connection there. Look, so we'll pass to you. You're pretty familiar with the process. We've got the submission, we've got the appeal, sorry, and you'll have some summary observations, and then there's a chance for us to ask questions.
Kia ora.
I'm in your hands.
Kapai. O nei rā te mea atu kia koutou, aku rangatira koutou I whai wā ki te kōrero tahi, ki te wānanga tahi I tēnei rangi rā, kia tutuki pai nā wawata a mātou te whānau nā hapu nā iwi o Toi Rāwhiti. Nō reira kia koutou, tēnā koutou. He te takuiti he mokopuna hau no te Toi Rāwhiti me te Tai Rāwhiti hoki. Ko whakatōhia ko ngaitai te whānau punu me Ngāti Porou hoki o Kuiwi, ko Jodie Porter tōku ingoa. I have been granted the privilege of speaking to both our submission and our appeal, which we accept as read, and that all points made in our submission and our appeal continue to be relevant in this process. Me mihi ka tika atu au ki a koe e te rangatira David, me koutou hoki Stace, koutou nā kaimahi o te kaunihira o Ōpōtiki, ki a koe hoki Maxi, e te rangatira tēnā koutou. As previously mentioned, we have apologies from our iwi rangatira, but despite that, we also acknowledge Anaru Vuko, who was referenced to earlier by Council as the chairperson of Ngāi Tai Iwi Authority, at the same time as speaking before the Crown in terms of the Treaty Principles Bill and a submission made by Ngāi Tai. So we can all appreciate the workload that our iwi rangatira are under in terms of serving and advocating for and on behalf of our iwi communities. So we acknowledge those pulling demands at this time. It's also a point of reflection to remind ourselves of the words of our great rangatira, Dr. Ranginui Walker, and he uttered the statement, ka whawhai tonu mātou. And the submission and this appeal, regardless of whether the current arrangements were established in 2001, predate and precede our inherent rights to self-determination and effectively representation in our tribal ancestral lands. We share our thinking today in the spirit of Te Tiriti o Waitangi and our aspirations to uphold and honour Te Tiriti o Waitangi. We see this opportunity in this process to be a great chance to reset and to set a new direction and aspiration to design the architecture that best supports a Tiriti-led local government. And we propose today what that might look like and what that might feel like to support greater and effective participation in local government processes where we can see ourselves part of that process and effectively can contribute to the ways in which our community can shift from deprivation to flourishing, which is the reason why Toi Rāwhiti was established, further pursuant to the Labour government's health reforms that established Toi Rāwhiti as our three iwi collective to come together firstly as a locality in the health space, but ultimately what has been determined by our iwi rangatira is the value that working in this way has afforded, the ways in which we work together, the ways in which we can share resources, share information, and accelerate our development moving forward. Ultimately, the vision of our collective as Toi Rāwhiti is for toi ora, and that is the absolute well-being of our people, not just in health, not just in politics, but in all aspects of our toi ao, which is our Toi Rāwhiti ecosystem that is inclusive of all of our natural taonga and of course our people in this place that we refer to as Toi Rāwhiti, known to you all as the Ōpōtiki district. We do feel that the opportunity can dramatically change the way in which our community is currently suffering, and we know that there's a significant role and function that local government could and should play in creating supportive environments for our people to flourish. And so we are here today in front of you all as commissioners to support with that decision making to effectively be the change that we wish to see in terms of how we consider ourselves to be effectively represented. We want to focus on two things today. Primarily, we want to highlight the importance of our people effectively being represented in ways that are meaningful and best reflect how we see ourselves, and also to represent the ways in which we organise ourselves. Accordingly, these are our communities of interest as defined and determined by ourselves for ourselves. There were several references made that explicitly accept that there are 3 iwi within the Ōpōtiki district in the greater Toi Rāwhiti region, and therefore it is widely acknowledged and accepted our iwi rohe respectively within inside the Ōpōtiki district. Secondly, we want to highlight the opportunity that you as local government commissioners have in determining and shaping what a tiriti-led local government could look like. And for us, this is about equitable and appropriate representation and the chance to uphold Te Tiriti o Waitangi through the distinction of iwi wards and the concept of mana to mana representation arrangements that ensure effective and equitable representation. Starting with the concept of communities of interest, we strongly recommend that you all, as commissioners in this process, firstly conduct a review of the concept of a community of interest. It is considered a failure of local government that guidelines for representation reviews undertaken in Aotearoa, New Zealand in 2025 are informed by local government definitions and discussions that were first made in Australia in 1989. Sorry, a whole 100 years I added on there. We note that there is no consideration of Te Tiriti o Waitangi in the socio-cultural and political dimensions pertaining to ancient and intergenerational and existing tribal boundaries within this process. Toi Rāwhiti confirmed that the proposed representation model does not meet the fair and effective representation principles of the Local Electoral Act, nor does it meet our partnership expectations as iwi with recognised rights as mana whenua. The Māori population within Toi Rāwhiti, as previously shared by Mia Moore, is currently estimated to be 63%. With forecasts predicting that the Māori population is set to increase upward of 70% by as soon as 2030. As iwi, we expected and also invited the Council to work with Toi Rāwhiti as a collective in the representation review process in good faith and in ways that respected the mana of our tribal authorities before adopting and implementing legislative or administrative measures that will affect us. The very construct of a Māori ward is both an iwi and Māori matter, and therefore required authentic engagement with iwi as experts. This did not occur. The level of engagement from Council to ensure hapu and iwi were supported to be able to effectively engage in this process was well short of what would be expected in a tiriti-led partnership between local government and iwi as mana whenua. The Local Government Act clearly states that councils have an obligation as a treaty partner to maintain and improve opportunities for Māori to contribute to local government decision-making processes. It also explicitly states that councils must take into account the relationship of Māori and their culture and traditions with their ancestral lands, waters, sites, wāhi tapu, valued flora and fauna, and other taonga. We urge you today as local government commissioners to depart from the statistical calculations that are based on the 10% ruling. The proposed model as put forward by Council is non-compliant to this rule, and therefore we acknowledge that we are now collectively afforded with this space in this time to meaningfully explore how whakatohia ngaitai and te whanau apanui as communities of interest in the Ōpōtiki district that we refer to as the Toirāwhiti region are to determine how we should be grouped as Māori wards to ensure effective iwi representation. It is less important for us to be concerned with the number of people within a ward area than it is for us to be actively asserting our tribal regions and protecting our tribal boundaries, whilst working together as three iwi to champion an agenda of purposeful transformation to shift from deprivation to flourishing in this generation. I now turn to the number of elected members. There has been no justification as to why the Ōpōtiki District Council considers that a council made of three Māori wards and three Māori councillors and 4 general councillors and a community board is fair and will effectively represent our communities of interest. I think it was referred to earlier in your kōrero, Mayor Moore, that you saw this as a right fit, and we challenged that very notion because a right fit would allow for and provide each iwi in their own mana whenua to have representation of a councillor and for our iwi Māori ward boundaries to respectfully acknowledge our iwi rohe pōtai. We acknowledge that we can't proceed to endorse this proposal that we feel is in collective breach of our rights. It is difficult for us to engage in conversations with these sorts of processes when the discussions are framed by options that further entrench breaches of Te Tiriti o Waitangi and international Indigenous rights law. We are entitled not to be subject to this constant limiting of the space in which our rights can be realised. This, we feel, is a key part of maintaining the power and decision-making imbalance that has delivered over a prolonged period of inequity for our people, resulting in all the social imbalances we now face and that Toirāwhiti was established by our iwi to address. Instead, we are entitled to ask what type of representation would reflect the honourable implementation of our tiriti arrangement and what representation models would best give life to our internationally recognised rights. We therefore propose a solution that effectively will manage both matters pertaining to the determination of whakatohia ngaitai and te whānau apanui as communities of interest and the equitable architecture of what a tiriti-led local government in Toirāwhiti must look like. As mana whenua within this region, the iwi affiliated with Toirāwhiti are entitled to fair and equitable representation as a matter of law. We therefore propose that the number of elected members across the Māori and general wards reflects an equitable approach. This could equitably be matched 3 iwi Māori wards with 3 iwi Māori councillors and 3 general councillors across 2 wards, or alternatively 4 iwi Māori wards with 4 iwi Māori councillors and 4 general councillors across 2 wards. In the event that the commissioners determine what effective representation might look like for the Ōpōtiki District Council, we ask that you respectfully consider the importance of our tribal boundaries in this process, that those ward areas would naturally align to our tribal boundaries and therefore have greater or give greater effect to the realisation and implementation of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. We also note that if there is to be a determination that potentially we have 4 iwi Māori councillors, that whakatohia be represented by 2 councillors to accommodate for the very fact that has already been raised that the Ōpōtiki Township is greater in scale and there is definitely more complexity at play in terms of that geographical area. We see the importance ultimately of our iwi rangatira by way of election, working alongside general ward councillors in our region that effectively give fair and equitable representation across our communities of interest. I just probably wanted to make a point that I suppose in terms of the arguments raised by Mia Moore in the fact that he sees Toi Rāwhiti as not the effective representation body of our iwi, that statement is acknowledged. And we admit, in terms of the emerging nature of this new way of working, that we are at the sharp end of change in terms of doing things differently. And in terms of following this submission and then appeal process, that we respectfully wish to declare our ultimate intention is to ensure equitable representation, and that we see that that is in the best interests of our people, and in particular our iwi populations. As Mia Moore has mentioned, 90% of our iwi live away. And this is a phenomenon that we must protect as iwi if we were supported to have mana-to-mana representation at the local government table, to ensure that we can protect the views of our iwi populations, whether they are residing within our Toi Rāwhiti or Ōpōtiki district region, or whether they are living away. And I think this is a best fit in terms of how we must move forward in this direction as we enter into the 2025 local elections and beyond, noting that our aspiration as Toi Rāwhiti is for our kaupapa to disrupt the current momentum that is underway. And I'm sure you are all very familiar with the news and the media reports about what is happening in our community. And by 2040, we want to see a different inheritance for mokopuna born in this district. We want to ensure that we are part of the decisions that affect the number of liquor outlets, gambling machines, all of the things that have regulatory mechanisms that we could be part of influencing to ensure that we design the world in which they inherit. So nō reira kia koutou, me mutu aku kōrero I kona, and kei a koutou nā pātai, pātai mai. Kia ora rā.
Kia ora, Jody. Thanks so much for the detail that you've presented there. Just one quick point. Those notes that you used for your observations today, can we get a copy of them? Can you, that'll be organised with Ali offline, but it'd be very, I couldn't get all the numbers down as you were talking there later on, so I'm pretty keen to make sure we just get a copy of those notes. So Ali will, Courtney no doubt will liaise with you if that's okay. Sure. Just want to check in with fellow commissioners. Just bear with me. I'll get the right screen up. Yeah. So Commissioner Bigham.
Hi, tēnā no koe te tuahine. I'd be really keen to see on a map where the boundaries, where the iwi boundaries would be drawn, and understand those numbers visually. I I rongo au tō kōrero, engari kari no kia kite te āhuatanga, so I can hear what you're saying, but it would be really helpful to understand where those boundaries might sit, where the numbers within those boundaries reflect and reference what you say would be most effective representation. Is there any chance that we could get our hands on something like that?
We were attempting to produce such a map, but as you can all appreciate, whakatōhea is post-settlement and ngaitai and te whānau apanui are pre-settlement. And so we are currently in a space where, for, I suppose, progressive purposes, attempting to determine down to the SA1, SA2 mesh block level, how our iwi boundaries are aligned, down to whose house is a whakatōhea or a ngaitai house, and we're looking closely at those mapping arrangements. Due to iwi rangatira workload demands, it has been difficult to have that map be authorised for these purposes today. But if I could ask for an extension of time, that we could try and provide at least a first draft of the tribal boundary areas for your deliberations. And I'm not sure at what speed you're wanting to make this determination. I'm familiar with April, but if I could have some sort of indication of a time period that we could ensure that that is presented to form part of your deliberations, that would be really welcome, because unfortunately matatini is priority, as well as many other kaupapa. So yes.
I think, Jody, we've got a couple of challenges, obviously, and it's all around. There's two. One is timing, the legislative timing that we, the Commission, are bound by. So there's a given date where we have to have this resolved across New Zealand. So I make that as an observation. The other, but I also just want to question, there's a number of observations and desires that are outside the realm of the Commission's responsibilities. And I think that's the other challenge. I don't know what discussions you've had with officials in that space, but I do think there's some dialogue to occur there about what we are allowed to do, bound by the current legislation, as opposed to what is desired. So we're going to have to put our heads together when we deliberate and just understand what we can and can't adjudicate on. I think I'm making a statement rather than a question, Jody, to be fair.
Acknowledge that, but I think there's a saying, we should try to be breaking the rules but not the law. And so to push the scope of your powers would be welcomed in this space, because as I said, this is the sharp end of change. And we wish to test your powers and test what ways we should be working effectively.
Sure. Jody, I'm just going to pass through to Donald, who's a senior advisor, and I'll just get your perspectives.
Sure. I think for the law is that the Commission must make a decision by 10 April. And in order to make the decision by then and release it, we probably need a map within the next couple of weeks. So I don't know if that's doable or is acceptable to commissioners, but
and just further to that, Donald, when Jody was talking, she was talking about like a first draft map. So is it feasible and reasonable to be asking iwi to go ahead and do this important work if they're only able to get a draft that we then can't fully take into consideration anyway because it's a draft? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it possibly isn't reasonable. If a draft is still subject to debate, it's maybe difficult for commissioners to use.
Look, I think that's, Commissioner Bigham, you've raised the point that was just the next observation I really felt needed to be made. It will be very unreasonable to ask for pieces of work to be done when there's so much workload at the moment, if as a consequence of that work, the likelihood, because of the parameters in which we're bound, you know, we need to be a bit careful. That's why I think when we deliberate, if we've got any extra points that we do think we can seek clarity on, we can go away and do that. But I don't want to overpromise. I don't want to put workload on and then have with an expectation that something might happen if it's just not viable. But also accept the challenge of pushing the boundaries. I completely understand that perspective as well. So yeah. Benita, you got anything more to add, Commissioner Bigham?
Just to acknowledge just to acknowledge where you're coming from with your kōrero, Jody. I was reflecting earlier in South Taranaki. It's a statement rather than a question, Mr. Chair. But just reflecting earlier in South Taranaki, we were in the lucky position where we got 4 iwi, 2 wards. The numbers worked out for us to have 2 wards with a councillor in each ward. So the iwi boundaries post settlement, it was, you know, a pretty clean deal. So I just want to acknowledge the significant mahi still to do for you fellas in that space. And yeah, no easy answers, and certainly won't be any easy answers by the 10th of April. So reira no te mihi atu kia koutou.
There you go, Jody. It's a perfect example of somebody breaking the rules.
Just, Mr. Chair, just to say thank you very much for all the work that you've put into it and for coming to talk to us about it. It's really been very helpful. So thank you very much.
Kia ora, tēnā koe.
Jody, thanks for the effort. I'm only going to pose one question back to council in terms of the right of reply, and it's really quite open, asking just to get perspectives from council around a number of the observations that they feel that you have made that are either potential opportunities or something that can be dealt with in a different way. So I'm just quite keen to hear back from council around, as you well know, process is one thing, but delivering in other arenas is certainly achievable as this journey is being taken, I suppose. So I'm quite keen just to understand in the right of reply from Mayor David whether he has any observations in that space. So thank you for your effort, and we'll now move on to the Coast Community Board. Where's Ali? Ali, thank you. Can we just bring in Linda? Kia ora, Linda. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Oh, fantastic. So just for point of clarity, so the Commission have invited your attendance today. We're very keen just to hear your perspectives as the Coast Community Board. So though you haven't formally appealed, we still think it's really, really important to hear your views. Hence the invite and welcome. And you've been watching so far?
I have from the beginning. Kia ora.
Perfect. Very keen to hear your observations.
Oh, so tēnā koutou katoa, tainui te waka rangi āhua te maunga, wainui te awa, tōrere nui a rua te tipuna, tōrere te marae, ngaitai te iwi, ko Linda Steele taku ingoa. I am one of 4 members of the Coast Community Board, which starts from Tōrere all the way down to Port Tucker in the Ōpōtiki District Council, Rohi. Thank you for the opportunity to provide some input into this representation review, and I've really, really looked carefully at Te Rāwhiti's submission, and the representation structure that's proposed for the district is at the heart of a broader conversation on equity, governance, and the rights of Māori as mana whenua. This process must not only comply with statutory requirements, but also be a genuine attempt to reflect the aspirations of our Māori communities while addressing the practicalities of local governance. Toi Rāwhiti's submission is actually quite robust. It advocates for a greater level of Māori representation and a review of the consultation processes. Their concerns are politically and legally grounded. However, it is critical to consider both the statutory obligations the Council is bound by and the complexities of governance across diverse communities. And they have raised some key issues: Māori representation, failure of consultation, community of interest. But with the communities of interest and the boundaries, Toi Rāwhiti has highlighted that Māori wards must respect iwi territorial boundaries, an understandable and important call for cultural and political autonomy. However, while iwi affiliations are central to Māori identity, the community of interest concept must also include the broader socio-economic and geographical considerations. The Council must ensure that representation is not only culturally sensitive, but also pragmatic, reflecting the population's diverse needs across all the wards. So in terms of the Coast Community Board, we went through a consultation process with the Council. I reflected on your question around where did you go out to. We did have a session down in Te Kaha, because we hold our hui down there, and to be quite honest, no one turned up. And I think it's more around whānau's busyness. This is reflective of their disinterest, if I could say, because they're more interested in, if I would talk to them as a Coast Community representative, it's about the rates, it's about the resource, it's about the roads. And we have one kroa who is always pushing for a tunnel from Maraenui all the way through to Gisborne because of the state of the roads. And, you know, the fact of the matter is they have to put food on their tables. So they're not, there's quite a complex way of not having any interest in the Māori representation review. And that's probably even reflected when we did the non-binding referendum where we just got it across the line. I'm completely in favour of Māori wards, and we are in general, but it's how we go about the process that's probably the most complex issue that we're talking about. From myself, from a Ngātai perspective, and I did raise this at a Huia Iwi, that we are represented by Ngātai, and our rūnanga sits around the table, but we were not consulted as the iwi from Toi Rāwhiti, so that for me is an actual issue, so that probably needs to be worked on, just like we say that the Council needs to work on their engagement process, community engagement process. Toi Rāwhiti would also need to do exactly the same, because our trustees stood up and said, yep, we do represent you, but I actually said that this is actually really, really important for us, and we actually need to understand it. So the consultation with us as a community needs to actually happen. Because, yep, you do represent us. However, please inform us what's going on so that we have the right to let you know what we think about it. So that's probably really, really important. And probably just the last thing of me, and I should have done it in the beginning, I don't know if it's a conflict of interest, because I was one of the architects of the original application for the East Coast locality prototype, which has now morphed into Toi Rāwhiti back in 2022. And with this current government, when they decided to disestablish localities, Toi Rāwhiti has decided to move in a broader direction, not concentrate just on health. So kia ora.
Kia ora, Linda. I'm really pleased that we did make the effort to invite you along to give a perspective. Thank you very, very much for those points of clarity. I just want to check with fellow commissioners if there's any particular questions, and you'd appreciate I'm working off a small iPad, and I've got to press a number of buttons to make sure that I see everybody. So Commissioner Bigham.
Ai, tēnā hoki koe Linda, ngā mihi, mō tō kōrero. Thank you so much for providing some of that perspective. And really, just want to back up what Brendan said. It's really valuable knowing that you're in the system and can see from inside how things might look or need to look. Just in terms of the community board reach across the three iwi, has there ever been any kōrero about the need for, how is the community board constituted? Do you have iwi reps on the community board or just elected at large?
Elected at large. So it starts from Tōrere, which is our from our Ngātai perspective, and then goes on. So it's actually representative probably of Ngātai, which is myself, but I stood because I was asked to stand as in a community of interest and in Te Whānau Āpanui. So if it comes back this way, it's not actually representative of Te Whakatōhea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so I think that's where Jody is talking about with the iwi boundaries. That's quite crucial to actually understand. So that's the Coast Community Board. There are four representatives that sit on that board. There's currently myself and Michael Collier that whakapapa to Ngātai, but he can also whakapapa to Whakatōhea and Te Whānau Āpanui. And then we have Jack Parata and Alan Wainga, who are broadly whakapapa to Te Whānau Āpanui and Te Whakatōhea.
Okay, cool, thank you. But as we well know, with these kinds of things like community boards and at-large wards and things like that, there's no guarantee that the people that we might want to stand in those wards, there's no guarantee there will be a lot of Māori representation, etc. It's just whoever decides to stand and get elected that time around. So, kapai, just really helpful to understand how and where you sit. Thank you.
And just to and I don't know what the year was, but I think it was when Vaughan Payne was the CEO of the Ōpōtiki District Council. The boundary of the Coast Community Ward was actually shifted to so that we could have a representative of Ngātai within there, because it was further down the coast and it was more representative of just Te Whānau Āpanui. So that was actually a change that actually happened, and I'm not quite sure what the year was, which was the reason why we were able now to stand within the Coast Community Board.
Ka rawe. Ngā mihi nui.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. I'll just check with Commissioner Ball. Are you happy?
Yes, thank you very much for your effort and for coming to talk to us today. Thank you.
Kia ora.
Brilliant, Linda. Kia ora. Thank you.
Awesome.
You can go back to the beach now.
Haka.
Are you at Te Matatini?
No, Carl. We're watching it on the big screen at work.
Kei te pai.
Okay.
I'll cheer for you.
Rightio. So we've gone fractionally over time. I think it's probably useful to have a 5-minute break. Just let me check. Was it 3:24? Can we just? Is that all right if we just take just a 5-minute break and come back at 3:30? Everybody's happy? Okay, so turn your screens off and your mics. Leave everything else live, and then we'll just take a break, and then we'll reconvene at 3:30. Brilliant. What are we doing here? Right, I'm back on. Right, Ali, where are you? So we're not in control. Ali's in control.
Yes, Commissioner, we're all back on.
Are we?
Yes.
Oh, maybe if I press the right button and get the gallery. Fantastic. Right, thank you. So we're all back on, and so just so going back to you, Mayor David, we haven't fired a whole lot of questions, obviously, but in terms of a right of reply, I'm sure you'll have some observations to make in relation to some of the points that Jodie raised in her commentary, and I think can I just leave it at that for you to sort of offer some perspectives. We just get
good to go. Everyone there?
Yep.
Yep. Yep. Look, I'm just going to touch on briefly. We are bound by, we're bound by legislation to do what we need to do for consultation, and we did widely consult through the community from the East Cape all the way through to Ōpōtiki. One thing that I did in my first month in the job is I went on a road trip with the new CEO, and we went to these communities of interest, and we went to Whānau Apanui, and I got a bit of a telling off because it apparently was the first time in the entire existence of that organisation that the mayor and the CEO had been to visit. So they told me off for being late, but that's what we did, and it's been uncomfortable going into and listening to. It's hard to. There seems to be fatigue in consulting from the community, and I just I'll share with you. I agree with a lot of what Jodie says, but it's outside our realm of what we can and can't do. So we're bound by the rules, and Dale was guiding us through those. Just really want to push the fact that whatever the makeup of the Māori wards, this isn't the final solution. This is part of the puzzle of having better iwi consultation. So having a committee as well as the Coast Community Board is something we wish to pursue, and we've already looked into this. So it is very difficult, as we saw today. We didn't have key people turn up to support Jodie. That is very usual in current days. Everyone is stretched. So maybe we need to look, and actually, if they won't come to us, let's go to them. So that's work that we're working on now, and if I'm lucky enough to return in October, that'll be something they'll be driving to do to build resilience, and we've got 60% of our population is Māori. Only 45% I believe is on the Māori roll, and that 60% is growing quite strongly, and the kohanga generation is coming, so a lot of this is going to be irrelevant in the many years to come, because they're going to be enforced in these roles. That's all I can really touch on. I don't want to get into a discussion on whether they represent iwi or not. No. I've viewed my concerns there. Yeah. Yeah.
No, look, in all honesty, I think there's two words that you have offered a respectful acknowledgement, and I think that's a fair way that I would summarise those observations that you've made. Clearly, you've listened, and clearly you can see the challenges that you have in your community. Not unreasonable to observe the challenges you have. You're not on your own. Many of us around New Zealand have councils around New Zealand have their own variations of the same challenges. But I didn't think it was. I don't think it's right to fire a whole lot of questions. I think we've got a damn good feel for the challenges, and we've got to make our decisions based on the legislation that we're bound by, and you've already articulated that. I'm just going to check with fellow commissioners to make sure that I haven't missed anything. Commissioner Bull, are you happy?
I'm happy, thank you very much.
Okay. Commissioner Bigham?
I'm happy, ngā mihi.
Okay, so on the basis that we've gone through the process, we've heard from those parties who've appealed and who have been supported by others, and we recognise and acknowledge that for those who wanted to attend today haven't been able to, but I think their views have been pretty fairly articulated. So the Commission now has received all the information it can. Should it be necessary, Courtney may well go back to officials if that's appropriate. She'll certainly be in contact with Jodie to get the notes from her observations. We'll deliberate offline around how much attention we want to put into the idea of getting some maps. We'll just have a chat offline between us as commissioners around that, and that can go back out through Courtney. So I think that concludes all of the work that we need to do today. I've just got two acknowledgements to make. One is to former Mayor John Forbes, who I worked with closely over many years, and saw the work that he did up in Ōpōtiki, and also just a little personal acknowledgement to Mrs. Hickey, who from Hickey Sports, who passed away. I went to school with her sons, and always had a soft spot for Mrs. Hickey. So I just want to pass that back to you. It's wonderful where the connections are in this world, but she was a lovely lady. So I think we conclude there, and I'm going to ask Commissioner Bigham to close us out with our karakia.
Kia ora. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to echo the sentiments around former Mayor John Forbes and his contribution, not only to Ōpōtiki and what he's done for your community there in terms of lifting Māori engagement, but you may not be aware, John held the space for Te Maruata in the local government New Zealand organisation for a long time, while there were very few of us and we had very little voice and very little inclination to be in the local government space. So John was our po. He's the reason I'm still suffering in local government, actually, for this long. He wouldn't let me resign after my first term. So, yep, most heartfelt accolades to John Forbes for not just what he did in your community, but across the motu for Māori and local government. Nō reira, ki runga I tērā, he mihi anō tēnei uri o taranaki maunga ki o koutou, o toi rāwhiti, mō koutou kaa, mō koutou hia ki te whakanui I o koutou kāinga, I o koutou tāngata, I o koutou tamariki mō kopuna. Nō reira, tēnā nō koutou katoa. Ahakoa te whakapapa, kei te mahi tonu koutou. So just thanking you again in your homes, and regardless of where you whakapapa to, the fact that you're there doing the work for the future generations, we acknowledge and we thank you for that. So our commission karakia to close that we always utilise is unuhia. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia te urutapa nui. Kia wātea, kia māma, te ngākau te tinana te wairua I te arataka tū. Koia rā e rongo whakairia ake ki runga, kia wātea, aira, kua wātea, hope, pai marire kia tātou. And I'll go and cheer for te whānau Wapanui at 4:30.
Kia ora. Ka kite.
Ka kite, mauri ora.
Okay.